When I visit federal prisons, I generally give a relatively lengthy presentation. Sometimes it's like 3 hours long, and there are several hundred people in the audience. But when I'm making a presentation, I always like to ask groups in the audience because engagement is really great, and the interactivity is really what makes a presentation effective. So I always ask people in the audience, how many books have you read since you've been in prison? Or how long have you been in prison? Somebody will say 3 years, 5 years, 15 years, whatever the case. And I'll say, how many books do you think you've read? And the answer is always a lot. I read a lot. And it's great that people read a lot. But a better approach than saying I read a lot is to be very specific. And that's what leads us to today's journal entry and also instructions for those who are working to build profiles on prisonprofessorstalent.com. And I don't want to tell you what it's about. I'll just read the entry, and then we will discuss it on the flip side, all the different ways that this tactic, because this tactic was a part of my strategy, I'll describe how it opened opportunities in numerous ways throughout my journey in prison and, of course, upon my release. So let me turn to the actual journal entry for July the 14th, 2023. Today's daily journal will reveal how a deliberate reading strategy influenced my preparations for success upon release. Several years into my sentence, I remember lying on the rack in my cell. I felt so grateful that I could read. I was alone, with decades remaining to serve. I felt thankful that I could see. Without vision, I wouldn't be able to read. And if I couldn't read, my time inside would challenge me. I wouldn't feel productive if I couldn't engineer ways to make my time count. By reading, we can make our time count. We simply had to figure out how to read deliberately. While staring at the ceiling and trying to sleep, I didn't count sheep. Instead, I tried to recall all the books I had read since DEA agents arrested me. More than 35 years have passed since my arrest in 1987. But I still remember the first book I read in prison, The Flight of the Falcon. Before my arrest, I watched The Falcon and the Snowman, an espionage film with Sean Penn and Timothy Hutton. The film profiled two adolescents from good families who got into trouble. They broke the law and went to prison. In The Flight of the Falcon, I learned that one of the characters escaped. In that solitary cell, I realized I had a choice. I could read books that would entertain me, or I could read books that would contribute to my preparation for success. Either option would help. By reading well, I would learn how to structure language in ways that would make me a better communicator. Yet while trying to sleep and counting the books, I realized that I didn't remember all the books I had read since I began serving my sentence. I started to project all the years that I would serve. By reading at least 50 books each year, I would read 500 books in 10 years. I could learn a lot. But if I had a record of each book I read, I believe that I would have an asset that would open opportunities. That idea prompted me to write book reports. And those book reports would memorialize the books I read. With hundreds of book reports, I'd have a record that I could use to open many more opportunities. The idea that began in that jail cell evolved into a template. Each time I read a book, I would write the author's name, the date that I read the book, and then offer a response to 3 simple questions. Why I chose to read the book, what I learned from reading the book, and how the book would contribute to my success upon release. That tactic became a part of my long-term strategy of preparing for success upon release. People viewed me differently when I showed the record of my accomplishments in prison. They opened opportunities for me. My detailed descriptions that showed how I used time in prison to prepare for success persuaded my case manager in the halfway house and my probation officer to grant me a higher level of liberty. In what ways are you using your time today to prepare for success in the months, years, and decades ahead? Our community at prisonprofessorstalent.com opens opportunities to memorialize preparations. If you'd like to begin building your profile, email our team at interns@prisonprofessorstalent.com. And they could also, if you need an email, a mailing address, it's Prison Professors Charitable Corporation, 32565 Golden Lantern Street, Box B-1019 in sunny Dana Point, California, 92629. And the phone number is 818-237-3460. So I hope that you are thinking about that. In fact, what I really like is that other people are doing the same thing. And here's an example. Here's another fellow who built his profile on prisonprofessorstalent.com. And he is showing all the books that he read during his imprisonment. And look at that. He's read 21 book reports. And this is one that he just published a couple days ago. And it follows that same pattern. Why I read this book, what I learned from reading this book, and why I will be successful after reading this book. So this is a strategy that I know worked for me. I remember when I got out of prison and I went to meet the probation officer for the first time, and I sat across the table from the probation officer, and I not only showed them all the books that I wrote, right? I mean, I wrote a lot of books while I was in prison. These are workbooks. These are big books, right? But I could also show them all the books that I read while I was in prison, because I had a book report for every one. And that's a conversation starter. It's led me to open credit. It's led me to open business relationships. It's led me to build my life. So when you get to the other side of your journey, don't say I read a lot of books. Make sure that you build a record, and then use that record to open new opportunities that will help you reach the next stage in your life, a stage of success. That's what we teach at Prison Professors, how to prepare for success after a crisis. I am Michael Santos, the founder of Prison Professors, and I would never ask anybody to do anything that I didn't do. This is why I try to share this story with 1 million people that are in jails and prisons across America. I'm Michael Santos, and I believe in you.